I would like to begin to answer that question by first of all declaring emphatically that the Attorney General's perspective on Romans 13, in my humble opinion, is simply not wrong, but it's a misinterpretation of the scriptures. I think that it is ironic that one would decide to quote that scripture to justify a policy that obviously is not compassionate. I would argue that if one would actually interpret that passage in accordance with hermeneutics, then one would have to conclude that the only reason the Apostle Paul asserted that position was because of the Jews who were part of the Roman church, who essentially did not want to do anything that was told to them by a Gentile. And that was the essence of it. Paul says, even though he is a Gentile leader, and you being a part of the church, though you are a Jew, you ought to honor those who are in authority. And that's why the passage gets its historical context from. Obviously, the Attorney General is completely wrong in attaching that passage to that policy. That's the first thing. I don't think there's any question that those of us who are Christians vehemently disagree with that policy. I don't think there's any question. One of the things that we argue as a church and as a denomination, Christ, whenever he saw people who were hurting, there was a word he used to describe Christ's attitude. Splunchnitzomai is in the original language. It says compassion. Christ is moved with compassion to move the misery that created the problem. I believe with all my heart that it is a travesty for our government to take that position. And then I may also add that when the scripture says that God has ordained government, he has ordained good government. That does not mean that he has ordained the person who's in the government. I wanted to be sure that it is absolutely clear that it ought not ever be a time when our government would use children as a political pawn because you want to achieve some other goal. And then I may also add, I am absolutely, totally disturbed as a leader. That which distinguishes, in my mind, great leaders from those who are not. Great leaders usually accept more of the responsibility for the bad and less of the responsibility for the good. I am diabolically opposed to that, and I do not understand how any person who claims to be a Christian can declare it with their lips, but then deny it and don't demonstrate it with what they do in life.